Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same.
Thank you, Vandello, and welcome once again to Graphically Novel. My name is Josh Wasta, a.k.a. Fallout Fury, and with me, as always, is my Moriarty, my Hyde to my Jekyll, the more, in more.
More!
It's Bear.
I get weird compliments this time. Compliments I'm okay with. And with us, as usual, the lovely and talented our Miss Mina Murray / Harker, Ms. Jennifer Howland.
Oh, thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to introduce our guest, not enter our guest.
Ooh.
Different podcast.
Different podcast, yeah.
Well, you did say I was.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Anyway, we have a returning guest with us today.
You have to go to Rosa Coote School for that.
Reid, thank you for joining us again.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure to be here, as always. This one was a little more out of the box than we've done previously, or at least I've done with you guys. So
I'm also excited, almost ecstatic, with the fact that we actually have all of our guests in the same room.
In the same room, vaccinated?
I know, it's crazy.
Right?
It is nuts!
it's so nice to see people again. It's so nice.
Hey, this is a thing that we're doing. Remember when people
yeah.
did things?
Right? We used to get together and, do things together? Yeah.
So, chin chin.
Cheers.
Cheers. Whether it be beer or wine. So today, as I mentioned, we are doing more. Possibly, I think, I'm going to say it again this time.
We said this twice before. This is our last.
Well, I keep bringing this one up as the example of, well, if we do that one, it will be the last. Because this is League of Extraordinary Gentlemen by Mr. Alan Moore. The 2003 movie, also what we will be discussing for the media aspect, but the first volume. In what I found are 4 volumes, the Black Dossier, and the Nemo trilogy are all official works. Wellness.
Because it's more, and you can't have
less more.
Yeah, you can't have less more. You always have to have more.
It's a lot bigger than I remembered. I've got 1, 2, and the Black Dossier. I didn't know that it kept going.
Yeah, there's a volume 3
4.
and 4 that were done in the mid-2000s. And actually by 3, there's Mary Poppins is involved, and Harry Potter's in there.
Wow.
And,
If you were a British star in any shape of the word, you were involved.
Yep.
Well, and let's talk a little bit about it. Reid, how long has it been since you read this last, or was this your first time?
So I read this. This was actually when I read this book back in I think 2007, 2008. Because I was wandering around limited edition and I was like, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, I love that movie. This is gonna be great. First time I ran into Alan Moore. So I did.
Are you okay? Are you sure? Because you just went through a wall.
Right.
Yeah, it was a trip. I obviously enjoyed it because I bought more, but more. Yeah.
We're just gonna call this episode "Gone in 60 Pages." I think.
191.
Yeah.
It didn't seem that long, really.
I have read it before, but it's been over a decade since I read it, and oh man, there were things that I had forgotten.
So how long since you had watched the movie?
I saw the movie actually in theaters when it came out. That was the last time I watched it.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no, really? Because that's this is a movie that I watch on the regular.
Yeah. No, it's one that I caught in theaters and then just never ended up picking up again. But I love crappy action movies, so I remember it fondly.
Yeah.
You're in very good.
Yeah. Bear, how? This was your first reading, right?
This was my first reading. I was.
Was it on the Swamp Thing scale for you, or was it on the From Hell scale?
It was really kind of halfway in between, and I think that's probably because his writing was halfway in between. I think we're seeing kind of the evolution, because I know that going through the timeline, he wrote From Hell first, and all of it's 10. Well, not that wasn't his first work, but he wrote that before this,
right?
And all of those 10 graphic novels worth of that I didn't read. Sorry, Luke. And you could kind of see the evolution of how things were going because this didn't move as quickly as Swamp Thing did, but it didn't move as slow as From Hell did.
Yeah, well, From Hell was written in serial form, actually, and it was from 1989 to 1998.
Oh, so he was in the middle of...
Right, so he was writing everything else. I think Swamp Thing actually came just before that, his run on Swamp Thing that we covered. But yeah, definitely a different, more...
Right, and I'm not really what when somebody would probably, after you know me for a while, somebody would probably call a literary expert, but I was actually super enthusiastic about all the literary aspects that were in here. When I got into audiobooks, when I discovered I could listen to audiobooks and not fall asleep, after my 30s when I realized I couldn't read anything anymore without being 10 pages in and just passing out, the things that I started with were a bunch of the classics. So I started doing Sherlock Holmes. Don't do that, it's not good. I did Melville, I did Moby Dick. My take on that is read the first 40 chapters, skip the next 60, and then jump in somewhere about chapter 100 and read to the end and you're good. But that just ties straight in, like all of the classics that I read. This had a really good feel for me because everything that I had recently read was a bunch of these classics that tie straight into this graphic novel. I love Invisible Man. I love Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I haven't done 50,000 Leagues Under the Sea yet. 40,000 Leagues Under the Sea yet. Sorry, somebody's going to kick me for that. But
okay, I got it.
it was that's the next on my list. So it was all of these things popping up.
Dracula?
And all these. I did Dracula. Bram Stoker's Dracula is great for about the first half of the book, and then it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But all of these things just keep tying in, and I'm just like, oh, this is amazing. Oh, this is amazing. I keep catching all these little literary references, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, I just want to read some more.
Now, Jen, this is one of the few that when we got together, you had these books. I did not.
Yeah.
So you have read these before.
Yes. Well, and to come completely clean, I have not read them for a very long time. It was probably the early 2000s when I actually read them, and I have not cracked them since. But, I reviewed Volume 1 today. I loved the art style. They were gifts. Someone gave them to me. When the movie was announced, someone gave me the comics because, I have friends who are like, no, you have to read it first.
Wait, you have friends in this day and age?
I know, right?
Right.
Before you see the movie, you have to read the source material, which I don't hold hard and fast to that rule.
Right, me either.
But I was, I have to say that I was a little disappointed in both after seeing the movie.
Both the movie and the...
Yeah, because there were parts of the movie that I thought were really brilliant that was not included in the graphic novel.
And yet there were parts of the graphic novel that, oh my god, if we would have put these in the movie, would have made the movie so much better.
Yes.
There's a lot in the novel, though, that couldn't do in that targeted style of movie.
Not without a hard R.
Not without a hard R.
Well,
and
that's
hard R
fair.
action movies didn't make money in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
It flat didn't.
But to remake that movie today, you could almost straight up follow the entire timeline, or the entire progression of the first graphic novel and make it an amazing movie.
I would argue you can make an amazing HBO miniseries.
Yeah.
That's fair.
I don't think you would get a good release just because of some of the content in the graphic novel. Like the levels of casual racism and sexual assault in the novel are Game of Thrones and beyond.
Yes.
Understandable,
I
but...
wouldn't say beyond. I would say Game of Thrones.
Yeah, Game of Thrones.
Okay. So yeah, HBO you could get away with it.
But as Jen was mentioning earlier, that kind of fit the time that it was written in.
Well, that it was set in.
Yeah, it was set in. That it was written in. I apologize. Yeah.
It somewhat fits the time that it's set in, but only if you are holding very tightly to that upper crust English perspective.
Yes.
So did it have to be written with that perspective? I don't know.
But there are also elements that actually fit very well with today's politics, because if you look at the graphic novel, the person who's in charge is not Alan Quatermain like in the movie.
Yes.
It's Mina Harker. So the woman is in charge for 75 to 80% of the actual graphic novel. The one person of color that's in there has plenty of moments. He's basically the second in command and has plenty of moments where he's like, no, I'm not going to be the servant. I'm not going to be the beggar.
Right.
No, we're not doing this anymore.
Right.
And there are also, okay, so getting back, and then I'll come back to this. This is the first time that I read it. And actually, yeah, I mean, and it, again, been on our bookshelf for 8 years because that's how long we've been together. Yeah.
We've been together.
Yeah. So yeah, it's something that I was always like, oh yeah, I got to get to that eventually. And then this was the impetus to actually read it. And I will say on the scale of Alan Moore stuff, I would put this towards the top. This just really spoke to me. But again, I was an English major, so like I'm going through and I can't even help it. Every time a name is mentioned, I have my computer right here. I'm reading it on this screen. I'm looking up Wikipedia on this screen to figure out who that person is and where I know that name. And there's a bunch of stuff I haven't read. But I have an entire page of notes just on who these people are. Everyone even casually mentioned is a fictitious, is someone from fiction.
I was literally sitting there with the graphic novel, like, kind of cradled in one arm and my phone in the other hand going, why do I know Auguste Dupin? Why? Oh!
Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah.
I did so much Poe in high school. How did I not remember this name?
Well, and that's the thing is what we were just talking about with the not just the casual racism, but the sexual assault. A lot of those things. More actually, if you know the characters that are involved, is leaning heavy into that. There's a scene in the girls' school, which I'm going to keep this kind of vague, but it is like a one panel thing where a girl named Olive is getting basically whipped on her caned on her bare ass. Everyone else in that house, almost everyone else, comes from Victorian erotica, specifically the Pearl, which was like a big thing about like dominatrixes and all this.
That was one I did not notice, but was entirely entertaining.
The girl getting whipped though, her name is Olive Chancellor. She comes from a book called The Bostonians, which was by Henry James, and it was about a woman who gets caught up in the women's suffragist movement and becomes like a social reformer for women's suffrage. So Moore is intentionally putting a woman who is known as a suffragist, like a good woman, you know, if you're to look at the message, and she's in a submissive position to a Victorian dominatrix whipping her ass.
And I get that, but if we put this into the context of the time in which it was written, that's what would have happened to her.
Well, in Victorian erotica.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's a better clarification.
But I do think it is an interesting choice to put, because Henry James, brilliant author, to pull a character from a Henry James book
and put them into
that situation is
right.
Yeah.
Like later Pollyanna. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. Like.
Oh, well, okay.
I mean, yeah, so he is very intentional with who is the master and who is the slave, for lack of better term.
He was setting up a pattern.
He was.
Okay.
Now, is that pattern great to set up? Yeah. I mean, even the depictions of things like Captain Nemo. Captain Nemo's depiction, very good. In both, by the way, I'll say in the movie and the comic, pretty similar. Is it cringeworthy in the movie? Yeah, but it's also Captain Nemo. He's literally a caricature of a mad Arab during that time. Like,
well, do they ever
Indian.
Do they ever actually explain why he's working for the League? Because I mean, they set up in his backstory in the book at least that Nemo is a rebel. Like he's part of the Indian rebellion before the era of Gandhi against British rule. And I don't know that they ever tie in why he's bothering to help out the colonialists.
It's very brief. I don't remember the exact why he said, but it was literally like a sentence or two that was kind of vague, kind of mysterious, and is like, I have my own reasons, basically.
Right. Okay.
My understanding, because everyone else that was a criminal, which Nemo is because he's a pirate, was working off of a pardon. So, you know, Jekyll and the Invisible Band are working off of a pardon and a cure.
Yes.
But maybe Nemo's working on like basically going back to piracy, and he's working on a script he was officially a buccaneer.
Oh, you think he's looking for a letter of marque?
Yeah.
Well,
Wouldn't be too far outside of the box for what they do in the rest of it.
That's fair.
And tying into, or privateer, British privateer,
Well, that's exactly what a lettermark is.
Yeah.
Right.
well, I mean, if you're looking at Nemo as a literary character, his whole motivation is revenge against the British Empire.
Right.
And so, maybe you could take from that he's joining this to, I don't know.
Just to get intel.
Well, maybe to take it down from the inside.
Right.
But also, this league operates outside of the British Empire.
Right.
Which is another reason that he might, even though they say they're doing everything for King and
Queen and
Country.
Country,
Yeah,
yeah.
whatever. I think that it's possible that he sees that as an opportunity to take the government down.
I mean, and ultimately, at the end of at least book 1, they do serious damage to, like, government officials within the Empire.
Right.
So it may be that he's seeing it as a way to limit the evil of the Empire. And so, okay, possible explanation.
So jumping back to the movie, we got into this a little bit, but I actually had this written down as a point to make. I like this. I think this is a fun movie. Like, this is definitely, like Bear was saying, somebody just kind of pop on and be like, yeah, I'm gonna watch an action movie that's like, and I remember not having liked it as much, but in 2003 I was 24, so this came out shortly after we were at the Hilltop.
Yeah,
and
I was 25 or 26.
Yeah.
Depending on when it came out.
And so I don't know how much of that was I actually didn't enjoy it and how much of that was everyone else said they hated it.
I actually never saw this in the theater, surprisingly.
Oh, I sure did, because it had Sean Connery in it, and I was a huge Sean Connery fan.
Yo, same.
Yeah.
I'm also a little bit entertained because, like, knowing the history of Sean Connery, like, in his personal life, kind of makes me wonder if they ever made him, A, look at the graphic novel or not, and B, if he looked at the script and said, no, if I'm going to be Quartermain, I'm the top build here, we got to make this better.
Well, I wonder if that was him or if that was actually the director.
Yeah, I would lean towards that being
Yeah.
the director and that being just Hollywood at the time.
Yeah.
Because if you look at some of the other things they did with Mina, like, she's very much the femme fatale. She's not written as a leader. She's not written as a tactician. She's not even, like, they mention that she's a scientist, but she doesn't actually do any science except for the powder on the ship. Like,
And
that's it.
in certain points, she's a liability.
Yeah. Well, but they
In the movie.
But also in the graphic novel, she appears to be a liability several times.
Right.
But really, she's the one that's, for the most part, leading this entire...
Right.
What did she call it at the menagerie?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I
she
mean-
didn't call it that. Mr. Bond did.
Yeah. She called it something else. There was
Yeah.
a different word she used. I can't remember what it was.
Well, and the actress, and I knew this, I just had to remember the name of the TV show. The actress who played Mina was Peta Wilson, who spent how many years on La Femme Nikita as Nikita. So, like, it's also, like, she was
Typecasting
just
from hell.
coming off of that.
Right.
And, you're moving her into this role, but people know her as, like, the example of a femme fatale at the time. So you gotta get Mina to do a little bit more of that instead of, in the comic, she is, like, almost a jack of all trades. She does a lot to move the story forward and to bring the team together, and when there are issues, she's the one that kind of addresses it. I mean, extremely, they kind of took a lot of that away and gave it to Connery, who was like, bolster up. Like,
well, the other difference between the graphic and the movie was in the book, Quartermain is wasting away.
Yeah.
He's
a frail old
He's a
man
feeble
with an
old-
elephant gun.
Well,
And
but
an
the
opium
thing
addiction.
is like, if you notice throughout the book, he goes from this gaunt, frail thing to like massively sturdy.
Yeah.
But in the movie, he's just basically hiding out from his demons. He's not
High
on
on
a sick
opium
bed.
for-
Yeah, he's not a drug addict that you
Right.
can tell. He's just basically hiding from his demons. So, there's a lot of, I feel like the only one that they really made look bad, as they did in the, this similarly, was the Invisible Man.
It was
Oh,
the
not
same-
as bad.
Not
No.
the same Invisible Man, because...
It is a different Invisible, but the Invisible Man and Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Well, Mr. Hyde.
Although,
basically.
that's
they
the other
kinda
thing.
redeemed him in the movie.
They redeemed him a lot more in the movie.
Yeah.
Because there is a kind of a scene of sort of redemption in the comic, but it's just, I'm ripping people in half now.
Mm-hmm.
On your behalf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the whole reason that Hyde goes with them is they introduce him to target-rich environments.
Yes.
Right.
And that's
Yeah.
Yes.
it. That's Hyde's
Yeah.
whole motivation.
I still can't help but love everything between the movie and the graphic novel that they do with Jekyll and Hyde because it is a direct line of comparison to my favorite character, which is the Hulk.
Right.
Yes.
All right, yeah.
I mean, yeah, the Hulk is
Is literally
1,000%
It's
Jekyll and
just your
Hyde.
modern day, especially if you go back to like Grey Hulk stuff, and
Yeah.
if you go to the original story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde,
Yeah.
and they mention it in the graphic novel where Jekyll actually says in one of the panels, he says, "Did you know I was once taller than he was?"
Yeah.
It was the same thing with Banner and Grey Hulk, because Grey Hulk at one point in time was just a shriveled little husk of an evil little man that just eventually just evolved into something bigger. So this is direct correlation for all the rest of you Hulk fans out there.
So, I guess the other thought that I had is other examples in media and literature where there's like a super smash up like this. I mean, because this is the first example I can think of me being aware of that wasn't like the Avengers. You know, that's a bunch of things that's owned by the same. And then as I got into it, as we have discussed a lot this season for one reason or another, I thought of Agatha Christie and I thought of Poirot.
Thank you.
Poirot.
And Miss Marple. And I could have sworn that they had met. Not in any novel they didn't. They did in a movie.
Yeah.
And they only looked at each other and like
Yes.
he winked at her.
Yeah.
And that was it. But when it comes to literature, there's a huge movement now, especially for things, amusingly, Sherlock Holmes and Cthulhu Mythos seem to be a huge...
The only reason that I can...
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Reid.
Well, so, like, the Sherlock Holmes and Cthulhu mythos has been a thing for about 5, maybe 8 years now. It's been cropping up in literature for a while, and it's starting to move into all other media. It's a really hard needle to thread, though, because in literature, it can be done because we can see inside Sherlock's head and see how the ultimate logician navigates a world where madness is real, where like, madness made manifest exists. Film or small screen adaptations have not succeeded nearly so well on that front.
I mean, they're starting to, though, because you have things like, especially with the BBC, they've done a lot, because you have the BBC Sherlock series, which I think does a brilliant job of explaining Sherlock Holmes.
It does. It
Jeremy
does. But
Braggs
it doesn't.
for life.
Right?
It doesn't include. It's not blending with the mythos.
Right. There's a new example that just actually dropped on Netflix not
It's
long
terrible.
ago. Oh,
It's god-awful.
the Irregulars is
Yes.
terrible.
It's
I have not watched
god-awful.
it yet.
I'm 2 episodes deep, and it's really cool because it does racially blind casting, and that's a very cool thing to see. But their characterizations of like what they do to not Holmes, Watson. What they do to Watson in that they turn Watson into this purely emotionally driven man of outrage.
Oh.
And he's cruel and manipulative, and I'm like, these are all things that are not Watson. We don't get to see any redeeming qualities from him. He's just manipulating these street children for his own personal gain.
And that's a bummer, because that could have hit the mark, you know, as we're talking about, because I know it deals with, like, supernatural elements a lot, and it's all about the Sherlock Holmes, basically, children's spy network.
I mean, I've seen it. Honestly, it looks like somebody went, oh, superheroes are a big thing. Game of Thrones used to be a big thing. Let's take the spider from Game of Thrones and incorporate that into some superheroes. Let's throw it all into Victorian England with the Benedict Cumberbatch Sherlock series and go.
So the two better examples that I have for this being done is
I should also quantify that with, I haven't seen this yet. That's just what my hot take on the preview is.
You're not wrong.
Penny
Okay.
Dreadful and Once Upon a Time.
I'll give you those. Penny Dreadful's pretty damn good.
Yeah, we've only watched the first season,
Mhm.
and we need to watch more. It's been on our list, but of course, homework for this show. And you know, if we ever do that book season that you've been looking for, Bear.
We'll get around to Dune sooner or later. It might just be a bonus episode.
Well, then we could read a bunch of Penny Dreadfuls and watch Penny Dreadful. But I mean, it's again the mixing of those characters. An example that I had where it's actually history and literature, and I'm gonna get in trouble with Reid because we'll see how he thinks about this. Black Sail.
Oh boy.
Which was a prequel to Treasure Island with the crew, like from Treasure Treasure Island, like Flint's crew, mixed with real life pirates.
Oh boy. All right, so Black Sails, like the cinematography,
To fill people in really quick, I'm gonna jump over Reid just to say he and I are both huge fans of pirates and piracy. He is more on the historical side. I'm willing to forgive a hell of a lot more for the sake of story.
Listen, I remember many sessions of the 7th Sea tabletop role-playing game that just went sideways.
So I will say, like, Black Sails, while it is not historically accurate, is a very well done storytelling, playing with a established canon in Treasure Island and throwing in historical characters, because like the historical individual of Captain Vane, like he's a bloodthirsty monster in reality, and so they did a really good job using him in that series. So Black Sails, I mean, yes, it's a drama. They take liberties, but on the whole, it's pretty well done. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and it was coming off of the same producer and team success with Vikings, which again started to get into.
Vikings, I have more criticisms for.
Well, you're also way more historically.
Oh yeah,
invested.
They blend about 300 years of history into a couple of decades there. So
for more on how much Reid goes into history, check out our episode on Hellboy and why in the first 20 seconds he hated that movie.
Okay. No, and it needs to be fair. The Hellboy reboots.
Yes.
The Hellboy reboot. The first two, like, Del Toro did, oh man, amazing work.
Because Del Toro.
That's only because you got a hard on for Changeling. That's all. Changeling
so?
White Wolf tabletop. I loved the new reboot of Hellboy.
No, he was historical and armor types and
yeah.
But yeah, so and you know, going back to like Once Upon a Time and a bunch of these things that weave together established stories that you know and somehow changing it a little bit more. It's kind of what in our episode on Sabrina, last episode actually, we talked about 2 episodes ago. We talked about
You're usually the one correcting me on timeline stuff.
On remixes. Jason talks specifically about how he likes covers and he likes remixes, and the things that you like are still out there, and just because someone reinvented it does not mean those things disappeared. They are still out there.
It's one of my favorite things is variations on a theme.
Right.
You know, it's like we can have this one thing, and yeah, it's really cool, but what if we just tweaked this? How much does that change storyline? Right. How much does that change plotline? Right. How much does it change all this other stuff?
There's a comic book series that was done similar style with all of the blending, and it went on for forever, and I can't remember the name right now.
Fables?
Fables, there we go. Thank you.
Yes.
Fables is, man, eventually somebody is going to wise the fuck up and make that into a TV series.
Tears are welling up in my eyes.
I know. And we'll be able to cover it for this show, because Fables is another comic series.
Lock and Key. When they did Lock and Key. Again, I'm about to cry. It's so good. If they would do Fables.
Right.
Oh.
Right. The same team that did Lock and Key doing Fables.
Yes.
Fables would be like your first 4 seasons of Fables would be amazing, but that comic gets weird after a while.
It redeems itself by the end.
Kind of like True Blood, where you start watching, you're like, "Holy shit, this is awesome!" And then you're like, "Oh," and then there's fucked up fairies. And
no, you get through that and you're fine.
Witch orgy.
Keep going. You keep going for Pam.
All right. So there's one.
So if you see that there witch orgy, don't stop. Just keep going on through.
Roll right on through that.
To pull us back to the book a little bit, though, there is a theme that we need to kind of discuss at least a little on this, in that, like, the movie really doesn't touch on it. The movie this is a straight up action movie. We're going to have fun with it and bring in all these interesting other characters. But the book, because it's Alan Moore, there's probably about 6 layers of what's going on. There's a bunch of different characters. I didn't know about the stuff from the Pearl or the girls' school. That's really cool. But we need to talk at least a little bit about Alan Moore's political perspective coming into his writing style. Because bringing in all of these different perspectives and writing in the harsh reality style that he does, like, this is not a nice world. These are not nice people at all, any of them.
You really weren't here or paying attention for our From Hell episode, were you?
No, it wasn't.
No, we in fact have discussed Alan Moore. And if this is the first More episode, awesome, because we will go over it again. But yeah, he's a crazy old fucking wizard.
Yeah.
Go back and listen to From Hell. Go back and
yes, he's a crazy wizard, and he's full on bug nuts. But at least in this incarnation of his writing, the first book, we're not going anywhere else on this one. Like, the perspective that he presents of Victorian England is terrible. And I have to ask the question of, is this him criticizing the people that idealize this? Or is this him just writing terrible characters because he likes writing terrible characters?
Well, I think that it's a little bit different, because if you look at the art and how they portray old Blighty or London,
Yeah.
it's a mix of Victoriana and futuristic. It's not real.
Yeah, it's
not meant to be a historical fiction piece. I think that he's using Victoriana and esoteric Victoriana.
Okay.
To create this world.
It's almost as if he's pulled London as a character the same way that he's pulled all of these other fictitious characters.
Yes.
Because he's even specifically avoided, like, steam...
London
style.
Danny the Street.
Yes,
Oh.
but not as cool.
Not as cool.
quite as
Yeah.
Because he's even specifically avoided, like, steampunk style art and,
Yes,
miscellaneous.
but correlations have been made.
Right, because
Because
Nemo...
of, I think...
Mainly because of Nemo.
No, but it's the whole, like, the element, the anti-gravity element and all of the... It's
Right.
not just Nemo, it's the other...
And very early on, it's mentioned that Tesla and Edison are both working to create gadgets for the League.
Right. So it is
And that is, like,
steampunky.
the basis of steampunk.
It's steampunky in what steampunk originally started out as.
It's almost more Lovecraftian.
But that's kind of steampunk. Steampunk, at its genesis, was, what if we take all of the fashion from Victorian era, but then make these crazy, wacky, like, here's a typewriter, but it's a steam typewriter. Or,
Just glue some
that kind of
gears on it and call it steampunk.
Okay, that's what it became.
That's where I was looking at.
Right. That's what it became. But when it started, it was like, well, what if we were in the Victorian era and because that's a time period where, the Industrial Revolution, when things just like man's movement forward in technology took a huge leap at that point in time in history. And that's kind of what steampunk is. It's like, well, how do we take these things that were familiar from that time, but make them advanced?
Right.
And that's really what was happening
So,
in this
and
book.
it's similar, like, in other areas, because you look at steampunk, and it's now been around for so long that it fractures into it. You could technically say that Fallout is an offshoot of steampunk, where instead of steam technology or electrical or
it's atomic punk.
It's atomic punk.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. Like, that's because you've got your steampunk, you've got diesel punk, you've got atomic, and there's all. You're right. There are all of these subgenres. It's like what happened with metal back in like the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
Right. And then you have...
And see, that doesn't even register in my brain, because when I look at Fallout, I go, that's post-apocalyptic. What the fuck are you guys even talking about?
Well, but the world before that, if you look at the history of Fallout,
my brain is just like, what subgenres of steampunk? Are you fucking daft?
And then you have the Dishonored games, which are whale oil punk.
I mean,
I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear you say that and drink my wine.
It is a thing.
It's 100% a thing, and I love that series, by the way. It's so well done.
Yes.
The world building is amazing. I mean, it's even got elements of Cthulhu in there, because
you say whale oil punk, and my brain goes straight back to Melville, and I'm like, no, I'm not reading Moby Dick again.
Not going back
But
there.
You can't make me!
But in this one, the whales are intelligent.
Yeah.
And fight back.
Okay, that could be more entertaining, but I'm not reading 40 fucking chapters of fucking how to build a whaling ship.
No. You're teleporting around and assassinating people while you learn about the world. It's a lot better. It's a video game.
Okay.
It's not Melville.
Yeah. So we've talked about it a lot, but I'm just going through, and I just wanted to say, if people are interested in reading this book, and you are a literary person, I just have a list here, and I stopped after like 90 pages, so I didn't go the whole way. But here are just some of the characters that you will run into in the first volume. So James Bond is not in this. His father is.
Or at least the progenitor Bond.
The progenitor Bond.
Yeah.
Mina Harker. M from, again, Bond. Quatermain. Captain Nemo. Auguste Dupin, which Bear brought up from Edgar Allan Poe. Anna Capoe, who was Nana from the French novel of the same name in 1880. Jekyll and Hyde. Dick Donovan, the Glasgow detective. Rosa Coote, who we talked about earlier, who was a fictitious dominatrix from Victorian erotica. Olive Chancellor. Katie Carr, which is from the novel What Katie Did. Becky Randall, who is from Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm. Polly Whittier, who is Pollyanna. The Invisible Man. Selwyn Cavor, who's from First Men in the Moon. Captain Mars from The Air Pirate. Kwong Lee from The Lamplit Hour by Thomas Burke. Ishmael from Moby Dick. Broad Arrow Jack from the same name, which was a Penny Dreadful.
I had to look that one up because I was like, is this just a Queequeg stand-in? And then I looked it up and I'm like, no, that was actually a Penny Dreadful.
The one person that is in this graphic novel that they still had the rights to, so Moore could not directly name, was Fu Manchu.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Which I'm sure is probably who he was going for.
Yes.
Originally.
No, that's why he called him the Demon Doctor.
Yes.
The one that I was actually looking for, because I didn't catch actually half of those, because I understand some literary stuff, but usually only the big ones. When they were talking about when Nemo pulls out the hot air balloon and says Dr. Ferguson, and I could not figure out from
Around the World in 80 Days.
Yeah.
And I figured that's where it was from, but I looked that up and I didn't see Dr. Ferguson listed as a character, and I haven't read that one yet.
Yeah, I don't know where the Ferguson came from.
They referenced Around the World in 80 Days in the movie.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's where we're getting it from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Dr. Ferguson. I think Dr. Ferguson might be a little bit more
Yeah,
obscure.
because wasn't that Phineas Fogg?
Yeah, that was
Around the
yeah.
World
You're
in
correct,
80
and
Days.
that's
Yeah.
the reference they make in the movie.
Yes.
And that's the character from the novel, but I was like, who the fuck is Dr. Ferguson?
Yeah.
Right.
But I was actually also surprised at the number, like, how they gave tons of nods.
Oh, yeah, no, these were just characters that appeared on page.
Yes, on page, but
Like, their background talk, I didn't even look at, and I will probably go back.
I'm going
and do
back
that.
to the movie and going, yes, there was a ton of things that they completely shifted around, things that were completely different from what the graphic novel was, but the nods are still there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that gives it the flavor that the graphic novel had, without being completely true to the storyline and characters in the graphic novel. It created that same feeling, that atmosphere.
One of my favorites was at the very beginning of the movie, because the graphic novel is all talking about this element that is, going to make things fly and, is lighter than air and all that fun stuff. And then at the beginning of the movie, they shoot down the hydrogen, they blow up the hydrogen blimps. And looking back after reading the graphic novel, I'm like, oh, that's a great nod.
Yeah.
Back to the graphic novel.
Yep.
We're like, fuck that. We're not actually doing that storyline.
We're
going somewhere else.
Right.
So we need to address one of the other big differences between the movie and the novel, and this might be that I just haven't read the expanded world of the novels yet. Does Dorian Gray actually show up in the novels later?
That was my other question.
To my knowledge, no, but I have the list of all forever.
And the other question
Like,
is...
this is, by the way, I am scrolling. These are
Just
all...
do a control F and
Yeah.
let's see if he's in there.
Well, I can just look at G.
Oh, and by the way, Jason, we're not on the D.
Yes, he shows up in multiple volumes.
Okay, so he does show up eventually.
My
Yes.
other question is, because I want to know, because we've all seen the movie at this point, is in the rest of the graphic novels, do we get to see Mina Murray in the graphic novels, do any of the fun stuff that we get to see her do in the movie? Is she actually a vampire, or is she just a human who happens to be badass?
She is a vampire.
Hence the scarf.
Right,
Ever
hence the
present.
scarf.
And I caught the
like
scarf.
the movie is like... The movie has zero fucking chill.
Yeah.
The movie is like, Mina shows up, she's like, I'm gonna eat this dude.
Yeah.
Like, the comic actually
also,
does a very good job.
timing.
Yes.
Vampire movies were huge in the early 2000s.
It's true, but they were huge for comics too. I mean, and Mina keeps it very close to the chest, which is great. I like that.
Well, but I also think that that's why she was Mina Harker in the movie and not Mina Murray like she is in the graphic novels.
Right.
That
And
actually,
with just references to her poor husband and being attacked by a foreigner and
that actually casts the opening sequence with Quartermain in the novel in a very different light, because that means that she was playing
Yes.
the victim in
Yes.
that scene.
Yes.
That if she actually does reveal herself to be vampiric later, that means that she was playing the victim in the scene with Quartermain, which casts that scene in a very different light.
Absolutely.
And gives Mina a whole lot more depth as someone where manipulation is her strong suit.
Well, and we saw that in the novel because, okay, spoilers, it's the beginning of the book. She's being attacked. Quartermain finally comes to and helps her, and then he's about to be killed, and she stabs the dude in the back.
I mean, yeah, but that's stabbing a dude in the back. Like,
But if she's just the victim, how does she even have the mental wherewithal?
If she were...
She's cowering in the corner.
Right,
oh my
exactly.
God.
If she were a stereotypical Victorian woman, she wouldn't have touched that sword. She would have not touched
Yeah,
the
she would have
knife.
passed out because her corset was too tight.
Right.
Yikes.
Fainting couch.
Fainting couch.
These
Yes.
things existed.
Yeah.
Yes. No, I get it.
that's fair. No, but I do like that as a different light for the opening scene for the recruitment. That changes a lot.
Well, and I think that the fact that in the first volume, the first graphic novel, nothing explicit is really said about much of anyone. They either display it. No one says, "Oh, that's the guy." Like no one says anything about Quartermain. Like, why are they after Quartermain?
Oh, well,
What
aside
is
from
he
his
as?
novels.
It's
dime
the-
store novels.
Well,
Well-
because he's well known for his exploits.
It's
Yes.
the legend.
It's the legends.
It's the legend.
But
They don't
the
say what
only
those
time
legends are.
anyone says anything about Quartermain is after he's pulled into the group and there's a fight, and Mina says, "Well, he was purported to be a great pugilist."
Oh yeah, his something about
and
she's writing the letter back to Bond,
Right.
and something
She's
about
like, "I'm not sure
like-
why you think he's so
like
great."
legends of his exploits are highly overrated or something like that, and I was just like, oh yeah,
I grew up reading
Yeah.
his exploits.
yeah.
I mean, to be fair, anybody going hand to hand with Hyde is going to have a bad day.
Right.
Very
Right.
true.
Yeah, very, very true. But, I think that in the graphic novel, aside from Hyde and the Invisible Man, we don't really see why Quartermain and Mina are part of this group, other than the fact that Mina's a good tactician and she's a leader and what have you. Nemo has his gadgets and whatever.
Quartermain's just along for the fucking ride.
Yeah, but in the movie, I think they do a really good job of establishing everyone's strong suit.
Well, but
and you have to
Right.
in that type of
Because it's a short,
right,
It's short.
form.
And it's part of the standard Hollywood format of, we're getting the team together.
Yeah,
Like, you
we
see
have
it in
to-
every heist movie, too.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
well, and it's
Heist movie hell, it happens in the TV series all the time. Let's take a look at Sabrina that we just did. It's like we got to get the Scooby Gang together.
right. And I think again it's why if this was done today it would be much better as a miniseries or as a full TV show if you're going to do all of the subsequent graphic novels, because there was so much packed into that movie so quickly, and in the graphic novel I can already tell that if I were to read volume 2 there are some mysteries there, like what's going on with Mina and why did Bond, because it's the reason that each of these people is picked up is because Bond said so.
Yeah.
So Bond sends them. So why were these the team? Like, why were these the people? And I feel like there is a meta plot that is happening that you could really do an awesome string through. If you look at what has been done in other media when it comes to long-standing TV shows, if you decided you were going to do a 1 to 5 season plot, and secure the rights, and you're going to go all the way through. Like, look
You're
at
going to
them.
bring up Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., aren't you?
I'm going to bring up I'm going to bring up American Gods.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
so there, from what I remember, yes, there is a meta plot. Also, there are scenes that crop up, I believe it is in book 2, that are disturbing even for Alan Moore. Like, there's some stuff in there where you see the depths that Hyde will descend to that get real. And that would be really, like, there's some stuff in there that would be really hard.
Yeah, and I have to make a confession. I own volumes 1 and volume 3.
No, 1 and 2.
Really? I
Just
thought it was
looked
3.
this morning.
Oh, okay, that makes more sense.
You do not have 3 or 4, and you do not have the Black Dossier.
I thought that I had volume 1 and 3, and I felt like there was a disconnect when I read them. Okay.
That might just be more.
Yeah.
But I still think that you could honestly really, I mean, having read as much more as we have at this point in time, I think that maybe it's just me. Maybe if I was directing, I could make a movie out of, and this is just random, but out of the first graphic novel, because I've just kind of gotten to the point where I can kind of cut out some of his dialogue and know that, okay, we're just doing more. So if we can cram 10 pages of what we just read into about 2 minutes in a movie because the dialogue's just going to go faster. Maybe I've just watched too much Whedon, but the dialogue's going to go faster.
Well, and I think that there are places in the novel where there's dialogue where you don't need dialogue, where
Absolutely.
you can visually tell that part of the story without spending time on dialogue.
Yeah, where
I
it's
think
going to take...
I think some of the subtlety, though, would be lost because Jen's right in that there are a lot of mysteries as far as, like, why were these people selected, what's going on, and being able to do a slow peel back on those, like, have the first season, have Mina appear to be just vanilla, be the tactician, be the jack of all trades, and then just leave breadcrumbs along.
Oh, and I'm not going to
Right.
deny that in this world of, Netflix actually saying out loud that, their TV series are basically designed to be a 12-part movie, that, yeah, we're going to get more out of a series. But I'm just saying, for those people that don't have the time or energy to put into that, we could squeeze this into a movie, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
All right.
And not really lose anything significant from the whole thing. Now, it's going to be probably like a 3-hour movie.
Right. See, and that's where, I don't know. With everything that we've reviewed and everything we've looked at, I don't know if maybe the Snyder Cut broke me.
The longer the movie is, the less you're interested.
Yeah, I would rather commit myself to a 10-episode long TV season than I would a 3 to 4 hour long movie.
You remember when, Lord of the Rings, we were sitting in the theater for Lord of the Rings, and you're like, oh my god, 2.5 hours, I gotta pee in the middle of the movie. And then we sat there for the Snyder Cut,
And I
and...
peed like 8 times, but I didn't lose anything.
Yeah, right? He just got up, let the movie run, and came back and said, oh, we're still on sad lamentation music, okay.
I appreciate that. I feel like thank you for telling me that because I haven't seen either of the cuts, and apparently I'm not missing anything.
Check out our episode for the differences in the cuts, and yeah, just watch me.
Listen,
Yeah,
they
seriously, just
both
watch
have
me.
their moments. I'm gonna be the voice of, I don't know,
Reason?
not Reason. No, not Reason.
That's not a good look for you.
No, not really. That's more Wheeze. I'm gonna be the more sadly politically correct guy and be like, they both have their moments. The only thing that I'm gonna tell you is, for the love of God, do not watch them with subtitles, because your opinion of both will go straight down the shitter.
Turn off the subtitles.
Turn off the subtitles. We watched the Snyder Cut with
And
subtitles.
it's not for the dialogue. It's
Well,
not because of the dialogue.
It's because of the...
It's because of the
Music.
descriptions of the songs, and
of
then
the music.
and
The
then
mu-
like the actual lyrics of the songs. Like when you're reading them, you're like, oh, fuck you. Like
Oh.
a lot
Yeah.
more.
All right.
Yeah.
But we should get back to what we're
Yes,
actually talking
yes.
about here.
Well, okay. I have 2 questions for the end instead of my normal one. But I think this one will be fun, and I can cut out silences if you think. What one character from fiction would you add to the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen?
We're just talking about book 1 here.
Are we talking about
Because
the
they
graphic
add in
novel
a
or the
bunch
movie?
more.
Right. No, I'm saying
From-
for you,
Yeah.
from all of fiction,
Oh.
who would you add in?
Add to the graphic
Just
novel or
to
add to the movie?
To book 1
To book
or
one.
the movie.
To
And
either, just to
That's
a
what-
League of Extraordinary
That
Gentlemen
was
kind of.
that was
yeah.
Reid's question.
Sorry.
Do
'Cause
you
the-
mean all of the books? Because they add a lot of characters.
Yeah, they add a ton of
Yeah.
characters.
Just book 1.
Like, oh man, for me, I would like just 1 page, maybe even 1 panel in book 1, telling us what the hell happened to Sherlock. Because if we have to put up with fucking Moriarty, I want some Sherlock somewhere.
Amen, brother.
I'm down.
Like, that's my hard one. The problem is that if Sherlock actually shows up anywhere, that puts Mina out of a job. That being said, if he's playing three-dimensional chess, then it makes sense. But, like, just give us one panel that, like, actually tells us that Sherlock's not dead or something.
For me, and this is actually Reid's fault, I would introduce a foil to Nemo, someone who is another pirate that he has had a history with, and as you go on, you come to find that it is the new version of Zorro. So I can have like a air pirate Errol Flynn Zorro, which
Errol
is
Flynn, or can we have Antonio Banderas?
well, whatever. Which is pretty much the character that I played for years and years, was Errol Flynn mixed with Zorro.
I'm honestly, if I had to pick one, not super up on my history, but as far as other relatively historical movies that I've watched, I kind of want to go with Wyatt Earp, but not like Winona Earp Wyatt Earp, like
Right.
Tombstone Wyatt Earp. Actually, no, not even Wyatt Earp. Let's put in Doc Holliday. I want fucking Doc Holliday in there. And I want from Tombstone, I can't remember the actor's name now.
Val Kilmer?
Val Kilmer's Doc Holliday
Ooh.
in there.
Yes. Oh, man. Like, yeah.
Screw this Tom Sawyer thing from the movie.
Full DTs and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, like sitting there drunk off of his ass.
Like
being
white as a sheet and
I have
sweaty.
2 guns, one for each of you. Yeah, white as a sheet and sweating his ass off. Like, that's what I want in here.
I mean, Moore does do a good job writing interesting and convincing drug addicts. So, like,
Right?
he and Quartermain would have a lot in common.
I personally think that was Val Kilmer's best performance of his life, was his role as Doc Holliday in Tombstone.
That would be a beautiful character to include. That would be a lot of fun. More fun in a movie than in
right.
Absolutely.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Plus, we're not going to get Val Kilmer to lose that kind of weight and get back into that role. So.
He's too old now. He's too old to do it.
Well, the character that is actually playing Doc Holliday from Winona Earp is doing a pretty damn good job.
He
is. Yeah.
He is.
I would
He is.
take him in substitute
He's
for
good.
Val Kilmer.
But he's not got the sweaty DTs because he's not actually
Right.
alive.
He's immortal.
Yeah. So the reference to another Henry Fielding character made me think of Tom Jones. And if you have never read Tom Jones by Henry Fielding, absolutely go do it. It's an amazing, brilliant novel. But it
All
was
right, I'm lost.
also
Educate me.
it's also a BBC miniseries. Watch it. It's so good. This is basically the story of a kid who just, poor kid, right place, right time. Everything goes right for him. Like, no matter what he does, everything goes right for him.
So it's our Domino?
Kind of. Not supernatural and not necessarily that good.
Not that good a luck.
Yeah.
I'm lucky. That's
Yeah.
not a superpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
Speaking of BBC miniseries, if you haven't watched, and I don't remember what year it came out, but there is a BBC miniseries that is just called Jekyll.
Yep.
That is a modern retake on the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story.
It's on Netflix.
Is goddamn brilliant. It was on Netflix. I don't know if it still is. We've got it on the Vudu. I bought it as soon as I found it. It is an amazing retake of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde story, and I think everybody should watch it.
Cool.
Oh, by the way, the novel is Tom Jones, A Foundling, is the full title of the novel. But the
Like a Mandalorian
miniseries,
foundling?
well, he was an orphan,
Okay.
so yeah, I guess.
Sorry, I
But
didn't get a
the
reference
series was just called Tom Jones, which when I started watching it, I think in the 90s, early 2000s, I thought it was going to be about Tom Jones, the Welsh singer.
Not unusual.
Yes.
By anyone.
But I was not disappointed.
So Reid, you came into this thinking that there were just 2 volumes of this. There's 3 and 4. Are you going to go out and find them?
There's more.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna go back and reread and dive back into this because I really like the world, and there are certain other comics that I am hunting right now that are out of print, and so I need something else to fill the gap. Damn you, Transmet Volume 3.
Oh, I have it.
No, you don't have the omnibus.
Oh no, you're right.
We can talk about the beauty that is Immortal Hulk.
Oh God, so good.
We'll save that for another episode.
There you go. Bear, will you continue to read this? You got volume 2 sitting right over there.
I love that. I always love that concept. You always say, would you continue to read this? And I'm like, yeah, when we're done with this podcast, like, done with this podcast. like done services. Like my only real problem with it is it's Alan Moore. So it's like picking up an actual novel. You're gonna have to dedicate some time.
Yes.
I mean,
Agreed.
also, there is a sanity damage cost that comes with reading.
Oh,
like,
I lost that years ago.
I can't shotgun him. It's got to get spread out.
Like, my White Wolf morality rating, just based off of Alan Moore reading, has dropped like 2 or 3 points.
Yeah, like reading an Alan Moore book is pretty much like committing Diablo.
At
Jenn.
least once,
Nerds.
maybe twice.
Jen, you still got 3, 4, The Black Dossier, and the Nemo Chronicles that you don't have.
I'll definitely read more.
Plus, like 6 more graphic novels of From Hell that none of us have read.
You know, I don't know that I would continue with From Hell. From Hell is just, it doesn't pull me in like League does.
Plus, the movie was better.
I think the movie From Hell was really good.
Yeah.
But I think that part of the appeal of League is that esoteric Victoriana.
I'll give you that.
Because there was a period of time in my life when I was obsessed with Victoriana, and I know a lot about
look around
it.
your living room, I'm like,
Yeah.
When does that period over?
But it's something that, like, you know, when you have knowledge about something, even if it's not something that you're into anymore, and you delve into something and they make offhanded references to something that it's an insider's club. So yeah sure.
This is very much, if you are any kind of literary
Yeah.
enthusiast at all, you're gonna get some kind of inside joke out of this.
Yeah, and actually that brings in, I'm going to keep reading these because I'm an English, major, not many things hit my, hey, by the way, you remember that 50 grand you spent? Kind of trigger.
Ouch.
Like, not that many
Ouch.
things, like, hit my English major, and this did. And I think the last time that I got, like, interested like this was when we were watching Penny Dreadful.
Yeah.
Because the way, I love covers, I love remixes, I love, when people redo things or reimagine things, and to take established characters like this and weave them together. I've seen it done poorly, and I've seen it done well, and this is done well.
Example of poorly being, when Madonna remade American Pie.
Well, I would go to the 3rd season of Once Upon a Time, which is when I stopped.
Which is about the time I stopped too.
Yeah. Like, it was really good, and they weaved everything together, and it was almost Fables-esque, and I really liked what they were doing, and then it just, too much.
Yeah, it fell apart.
Yeah. So yeah. Well, Reid, thank you so much for joining us again.
It's a
In
pleasure.
person!
Yeah.
Live and in person!
You're part of the 3-Timers Club.
It's
Yeah.
a pleasure, as always. I'll see what you guys come up with for next season, although we might be scraping the bottom of my my comic collection.
That's
so.
okay.
Well, that's why you want to come back,
We
because
want-
we'll
right?
introduce you to
New
things.
experiences for everybody. Remember, like, on our master list, we still have things like R.I.P.D.
Oh God, I love that movie so much. It's so terrible, but it's so good.
Oh God, I wasn't expecting
We
to
couldn't
get
get
that
10
response.
minutes in, but okay.
I think we found our guest.
All right, I haven't read the book at all, but I love the movie.
Well, tune in 2 weeks when we have guest Mark Parr here to talk about The Spirit.
That's just damn weird.
One of Bear's favorite movies, and one that he insisted that...
I insisted that you watch before we ever started this thing, and you
It's true.
fought me and fought me and fought me.
And it's
And
pretty
then we
good.
were like, oh, and it's a comic book. And I'm like, guess what, Josh? Now it's going to go on your damn podcast.
Our first Will Eisner that we've ever covered, which is a whole bit of comic books history that we'll get into. But until then, take it away, Vandello.
Come with me, I'll tell a story that you might have heard before. Graphically novel, but the same old trouble. Villains always knocking at the door. Pretty pictures on the page, but nothing ever stays the same. Do 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 do. show you something you ain't never seen before. Right or wrong, oh can't we all just get along? My mask is no different than yours. Pretty pictures on the screen, but nothing's ever as it seems.